Hi everyone, Adam Cleary from FourFourTwo here, and Bukayo Saka, he's just gone and scored a hat-trick for England, and everyone's just really happy about that because he's just so nice, isn't he? But nice never won anybody anything, alright? You think I got North Tyneside Young Poet of the Year in 1997 because I was nice? I did not. So I don't want to talk about how nice Bukayo Saka is, I want to talk about how good Bukayo Saka is. In fact, I want to talk about how he might now well be the most important player in that entire England squad. Alright, so fundamentally, the reason Bukayo Saka is so important to this England team is because of that old cliche, there's no easy games in international football. Now, what that's saying really means is that at this level, you are either playing against the elite of the elite, some of the world's best, in which case, yeah, fair enough, that's going to be hard. But even when you're not, when you're playing against a team who are way down the rankings, who are quote-unquote minnows, modern conditioning, modern data, modern coaching is so good now that they'll still probably be really well organised. And thus, if you use that as a building point and then just sprinkle in a little bit of talent here and there, the next thing you know, North Macedonia have just put European champions Italy out of World Cup qualifying. But England put them to the sword, didn't they? Bukayo Saka got a hat-trick that made that game look as easy as falling off a chair. Oh, are you waiting for me to fall off this? I'm not going to fall off the chair. Just imagine it. Anyway, very conveniently for me, all three of his goals in that game neatly illustrate one of the really important parts about his game and why they're actually incredibly important for what England are doing. So let's take a little look at them. So this is the start of England's second goal, Bukayo Saka's first, and it neatly illustrates how he uses space so well. You can see here that Macedonia are incredibly deep, they are incredibly compact, but Saka is holding his position on the right-hand side because, obviously, that's where the space is. Now you can see just off his body language, what he wants to do is run onto a through ball here, break into the box, leave the defender behind, and get it across the face of the goal for probably Rashford to tap it in. But the ball from Kane isn't quite good enough for that, so as he's stretching to receive it, he can't take it into his stride. So instead, what he does is he takes the defender down the byline without any intention to put the cross in. He cuts back in on himself to find a teammate, but you can already see, because he's forced the Macedonian defenders that far back, there's a lot more space now in the box. He lays it off to Alexander-Arnold, and instead of following the ball out of the space to try and get back into the wide area to put another cross in, he instead turns his defender and then just holds. Now, the obvious thing to do would be to move into this area here where there's loads of space, but because Macedonia have loads of defenders back, someone would just very easily see that and pick him up. So instead, what he does is he just slightly gets on his marker's blind side and then waits there. And he does that because the ball's going back out wide, so naturally that's going to stretch those defenders towards where that is. So if he just holds his position, if he doesn't move, the space will appear around him instead. And even though it's only a couple of yards, Kyle Walker's ball back to him is good enough, and his first touch is also good enough, that he then finds himself with about 3 or 4 yards of space in the box when previously he had none. And just as for that finish, that's the third time I think I've seen him score that goal this season. He got one against Everton and one against Leeds, and it doesn't get any less fun to watch the more it happens. Now, for the second goal, you're probably thinking I'm going to say something about that absolute thunder bastard of a strike and how he's got this really good ball striking ability, and I am. That is a very important part of what he does, but believe it or not, this sort of volley, looper, zoom goal is more about space as well. So again, he's holding his width on the right-hand side. He's trying to stretch the Macedonian defence as much as he possibly can. And because they won't want to leave Kane one-on-one at any point at the top of the pitch, this means there's this huge gap is then created between the left-back and the left-sided centre-back. Now, with them pressing up quite high to try and just disrupt England's build-up, that means there's not only loads of space in behind, which is a fairly common thing that often happens, but there's also loads of space in the half space. I've mentioned it in a few other videos, but if you're not sure what half space is, it's basically just like, if you imagine any part of the pitch that you would not class as being central and you would not class as being wide, it just sort of runs top to bottom. It's those two bits that aren't either. Anyway, it's really important because if you can land a ball in there, it means that you're close enough to goal you can do something, but not so close to goal that the goalkeeper is likely to sweep it up. And that is something Bukayo Saka is excellent at doing, pulling a defender out into the wide areas to leave room in the half space, knowing because he's got all that pace, he can kill them running into it. Now, yeah, granted, it doesn't always happen that a ball comes out of centre midfield and is just that pinpoint accurate and it allows you to bounce it and then volley it. That doesn't always happen, but the fact is, it does. And his first touch is excellent. It takes out the first defender, then his second touch is really deft and really subtle, and then the hard part, just hitting the bloody thing, he does perfectly. And Arsenal fans will tell you quite happily that he has that in his locker. He scored a few absolute raspers for them this year. And the third goal is pretty much the same thing again. He just approaches it slightly differently. He holds his position out really far to the right. He creates that area in the half space. Macedonia don't learn, but instead of looking to get a ball over the top, he just gets in front of the defender, gets clean through, and he scores. And the reason Bukayo Saka is so important is because he just has this mastery of space on a football pitch, either by just finding little pockets of it in congested areas or by deliberately in the build-up forcing it to happen by pulling players out of position. The thing is, right, that's only half the story when it comes to Saka, because like if you look at the left-hand side for England, right now there's probably a conversation to be had about whether or not it's better to start Jack Grealish or Marcus Rashford. Because you see, Grealish, not unlike Saka, is very good at holding his position out wide, forcing a bit of space, pulling defenders around and allowing things to happen that way. But Rashford, as you saw against Macedonia, can just burn past you. He can go on the outside, he can go on the inside, he can force things to happen in a far more direct way. But the reason Saka is so important is because he has both of these things in his locker. Arsenal fans won't thank me for showing this game, but the 3-3 against Southampton, yes, famous for many other reasons, but Saka's assist in that game is one of my favourite things I've ever seen him do. This is at 2-0, I think, and while you can see again that Saka's pulled the fullback over into this area to create some room in the half space, the defender is side onto him. He's not going to allow him to run into that, and there aren't any Arsenal players who are likely to do it either. And if he wants to cut back onto his left foot to put a cross in, then Southampton have a 4v2 in there, so they are really well set. You can see here that neither of the two Arsenal players in the box, or even Ødegaard on the edge, are looking to break past a player and get in front of him. They're not going to win a header at the near post, they're not going to arrive late at the back post and have a tap in, they're just kind of stood there, not knowing what to do. The Southampton defenders are not currently defending the 6-yard box because there is no danger in the 6-yard box. So what Saka does is he bursts past the defender on his weaker foot and gets to the byline, because that then makes the most dangerous area the 6-yard box. Now every single one of the Southampton defenders has to react and has to desperately try and get back to cover that space right in front of the goal. But Saka does not put it in that area where the danger now is, he puts it in the area they have all just vacated. It's a great finish from Martinelli, but if you look at how much room he has when Saka is weighing up his options versus how much room he has when he gets the ball, that's... not a lot of players do that, you know. So, look, right, the bottom line with Bukayo Saka is that whether it's through his incredible technique, whether it's through his direct running, his pace, his power, his just ability to create and exploit space, he makes things happen. Now, that's great when it's in the Premier League or it's against a team like North Macedonia, but what's so important for England is that Saka is capable already at 21 of doing this at the very, very highest level. Like, it gets forgotten in amongst the whole Harry Kane missed a penalty story, but against France at the World Cup, Saka was England's best player by a mile. You've probably forgotten about this because it was so long ago, but he gets England that first penalty almost single-handedly. England get the ball to him out wide, he carries, he's waiting for something to happen, he finds a 1-2 pretty much out of nothing inside the box. Hernandez and Rabiot, he leaves them both, and that forces Tchouaméni to come across, make a rash challenge, and give away the penalty. Doesn't matter who he's playing against, he just makes things happen. So, look, I'm not going to go so far as to say he's probably the best right-sided attacker in world football right now, but if you said that to me, what I would probably just do is agree with you. So, not the same as saying it, but it sort of is, isn't it? A bit. Oh, and I was also going to do loads of stats and graphs for this, just showing like how many take-ons he does and his progressive carries and all the stats and numbers, but it's the eye test with Saka. He's so good to watch. You don't need the graphs. Put it this way, every graph I was going to show you, he was either at the top or literally was the top. So there you go. Anyway, there you go. That's why Bukayo Saka is so good and so important for England. And okay, yes, just to circle all the way back to the start of the video, he's really nice as well, and that's great. But as ever, very interested to know what you make of all this, so the comment box is right there. Please unload all opinions, all of them welcome, and of course you can get me on Twitter if you want to continue the conversation at Adam Cleary, Clery. I'll say hello. In the meantime though, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to FourFourTwo here on YouTube, this is the kind of thing we do all the time, except I do normally have more graphs and stats, and sometimes I'd use the pitch as well, but I just didn't think it needed it this time. In the meantime though, thank you very much for watching. Stick around, why not? Watch some more videos, they'll release the good chemicals, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!